Crow. Crow needs headphones. Okay.
There we go.
Stopwatch on here. Whoops. And hello, Crow.
Yes,
Can you hear
there
me?
we go. I can hear you now.
Excellent. I can hear you. And then I don't know if you just wanted to cover something briefly. You've seen the times on the thing. I have a stopwatch on my phone, so I can kind of write down when we began a particular topic. Although, as anybody who's watched us this far knows, all times are approximate. It's like one subject kind of blends into another one. It's like, okay, when did that start? But anyway, yeah. So let's see. We'll do the rededication prayer. Your turn for the Father's prayer, is that
I'll
right?
definitely do the Father's
Or
prayer.
did I do the other one last time?
You did the dedication and I did the
Okay,
Father.
because I can do the other one.
Uh,
Okay, last time, so it's my turn to do both.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Let us pray. Universal Father, we rededicate ourselves to your service. Eternal Son, we rededicate ourselves to your service. Infinite Spirit, we rededicate ourselves to your service. Amen. Universal Father, I pray for the residents, council, and reeve of this rural municipality. I pray for the residents, councils, and mayors of the villages in this rural municipality. I pray for the residents, council, and mayor of the capital city of this province. I pray for the MLAs and the premier of this province. I pray for the people of this province. May we discern the truth, and may we find the courage to stand up for what is right. I pray for the MPs and the Prime Minister of Canada. I pray for the people of Canada. May we discern the truth, and may we find the courage to stand up for what is right. I pray for the Congress, the President, and the Supreme Court of the United States. I pray for the people of the United States. May we discern the truth, and may we find the courage to stand up for what is right. I pray for all the leaders of this world. And finally, Father, I pray for all the people of this world. May we discern the truth, and may we find the courage to stand up for what is right. Amen.
Amen. You want to know what's funny? When you say that you pray for the President of the United States, I immediately picture Donald Trump.
Do you?
Isn't that weird? I mean,
you know what? I haven't had to say this yet, but it would some of the left, SJWs I've been dealing with. I almost did it with that one guy I mentioned to you who was going over that thing with the slideshow and how it said the Democrats cheated the thing. I said how it anyway. So I just almost want to have somebody make me use this because I just want to see their reaction. Because to me, politically, Donald Trump was the second coming of JFK.
yeah. The difference is that he learned all of JFK's mistakes, and I know what they were too. JFK, he went into Washington like a wild fucking hog. and he just start rooting everything up, fuck it, and just basically made everybody uncomfortable, and to the point to where they felt like they had to defend themselves. That's the reason for the shooter at the grassy knoll.
Mm-hmm.
What Trump did was way more subtle, way more subtle. Like, I know that they probably expected Donald Trump to do a JFK and just come in like a bull in a china shop and just fucking be a wrecking ball. In which case, it would have been easy enough for them to take him out, because he would have pissed off enough people that they would have agreed, yeah, okay, this guy's got to go. But what Trump did is he fucked them all up. Is while he was poking this swamp creature over here, this swamp creature way over here was being left alone and left to continue their business. And so, true swamp creature fashion, when this swamp creature was like, hey, he's fucking with me over here, help out, this swamp creature over here is like, well, he ain't fucking with me, so good luck. That's how swamp creatures are. And just basically, it's no different than that reality show Survivor. Same fucking thing. It's like, everybody's your friend until fucking you're close to the finish line, and then you just betray everybody and cross the finish line. Well, that's how the swamp creatures look at it. Trump wasn't running for a finish line. In fact, he wasn't even playing their game. He was playing a completely different game, and they had no idea what that game was. And because they didn't know what game he was playing, most of them decided to just protect their own assets. That's the reason why we have all the proof is out there of the Bidens moving all of this money around, is because they got scared. And so they started moving shit and shuffling their board. But because they did everything in such a hurry, they made mistakes. And now Lithuania has a room full of monetary transactions that all trace back to the Bidens. And yeah, they want to see that room burn, but it's already too late.
Yeah. Let me just interject something. What you said Trump did was perfect, because among his detractors, subtle is not a word that is often spoken. I don't see that word used a lot with the anti-Trump crowd. That's not, yeah.
it's
it's right, but this yeah. So
it goes
after he played a completely different game than everybody expected.
It's the art of war. If you are if you're strong, pretend you are weak. If you are weak, pretend you are strong. If you're smart, pretend you are dumb. If you are dumb, pretend you are smart. This is I've played this game with opponents all the time. It's like, if I feel like you're going to be like someone I'm going to have to go to war with in the future, I'll play super dumb around you. I don't know nothing about that. And you're just going to be like, whoa, you're going to think that you're like, you're smart and you're going to outsmart me. And you're going to think that right up to the very second that you attack me. And once you attack me, a whole fucking series of events is suddenly unleashed, and you don't even know what the fuck happened. Because if I think I'm going to be going to war with you in the future, I will be setting up all these little traps everywhere. They're all over the place. Half the time, I don't even remember where the fuck I put the traps. I just know that and it's just something that I do. And then when you attack me, all those traps go off and I'm protected because I took steps ahead of time to protect myself. And by the time you figure out what I've done, the only thing that you're left with doing is chewing your own arm off. And basically, I've put you in a state of vengeance, which is where I want you anyways, because I want you to be pissed off, because pissed off people do stupid shit. And I like it when people do stupid shit because it makes it easier for me to win the war. That's what Trump has done. Except, well, this is what Michael has done, except it's the long game. He wants the universe to see evil chew its own arm off and just be like, this is what denying truth looks like.
So yeah, long game as in 200,000 years, right? 50,000. Yeah, 200, something like that. I keep mixing up the numbers. Yeah, something like 200,000 years is kind of when it started, this particular rebellion. And now we're going to see it, the final loose ends being tied up and woven up into whatever the tapestry is going to be.
Yeah, that's about right. It's been a 2,000-year plan walking us through. And Michael has had to make adjustments on the way. I mean, the first 1,000 years, things were heading in a good direction. And then John D. screwed it all up. But it hasn't changed anything. Michael's plan still stands. Because in the end, what those creatures that John D. let into our world ended up doing, they ended up doing exactly what Michael was going to do anyways. And they thought that they would just start a little bit early, and they sort of did. And that was to get us to a certain point technologically. Because without global communication, there really is no way to bring a planet into light and life. This, this is, we know this because of what happened when the circuits of this planet were cut off from the rest of the universe. I mean, the personalities that were on this planet were immediately devastated. It's like they were just torn from their parents and they were left orphaned on this planet. I mean, for 300,000 years, they listened to the broadcasts coming from the universe. The sky sang for them all the time. There's legends, there's stories. In the old stories, they say that the stars sang songs and you could hear them. And so that was the universal circuits. And then they were cut off from us, and we don't get the divine song anymore. And so, yeah, that was quite devastating to them. And so without that global communication like we have today, the Great Awakening would not be possible. It just would not be possible. It couldn't happen because we'd all be stuck in our own little knowledge bubble. We wouldn't know what's going on in the other parts of the world, and the cabal would be able to do whatever it wanted, and that's exactly what they did years ago. The only thing that kept them in check was the religious fanaticism of both Christians and Muslims. That's what kept everything in check for centuries. And, because people don't even understand Islam is very, very close to Christianity. It had to be in order for people to accept it. It's not some crazy desert doctrine that we have been led to believe in the West. It's full of, like, things, lessons about serving the community. Except they go one step further, and they just don't have a problem with slitting an enemy's throat. I guess that's where it starts to deviate, where Christians are like, well, turn the other cheek, while Muslims are like, no, just bend his neck and take the sword to it. Saves you a lot of hassle in the future. And that's what they did. That's why they were able to conquer half the known world at the time, is because they didn't leave potential enemies alive. They slaughtered everybody. And of course, if you're on the opposite end of that slaughter, then they're barbarians. But from their point of view, they're heroes. Again, everything is all about perspective. This is why there is no good and evil, because one person's hero is another person's villain, and so on. This is why there's only two paths in the universe: one that is productive or one that is destructive. One that is constructive, one that is destructive. And these are the only two paths that you can choose to follow. One path, who knows? I don't know. Maybe both paths leads to the Father in a superstitious way. So there are many, many paths to the Father. Not all creatures follow the same path. Like, some creatures would follow a different path from us to get to the Father. So there is no one way to just get there.
So how about I had a research assignment from last time.
Yeah, that Q
So ready
post.
for that? Yeah, we wondered whether whether Q said we are saving Israel for last, or if we are saving Israel last. And I went and looked it up. It's in drop number 916 on qanon.pub, and it says, and I quote, "We are saving Israel for last."
And then the very specific reason.
There's other stuff in there, but it's one of the lines in that drop.
Well, it says a very specific reason for not mentioned a single time. And I'm just like,
yes.
That is just a weird post. That's what that is. And we are saving Israel for last. And I somehow, when I read that, I was like, I figured, that could go two ways. Either somebody is a little pissed off about an incident from 2,000 years ago, and well, if you go Old Testament, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. But then I think about the personality of Michael and what Michael is like. And it really only can mean one thing, is that Michael wants to bring the children of Israel into the fold of the new covenant that he created 2,000 years ago, when he left his apostles. I mean, I don't know right off, but he told them very specific things and made very specific promises to them of things that are going to happen. And so these are things that are going to happen. And I think that Michael would want the children of Abraham to be brought into the fold. That just only makes sense, to not want to abandon them, because it was Malachi Melchizedek that set this whole thing up. And then Malachi Melchizedek is also said to be assigned the princehood of this planet, or as a viceroy prince of this planet, because Michael has claimed that throne for himself on this planet. He told the apostles that, but he left that throne empty. And according to the stories, that throne has been filled with intern princes for the last 2,000 years. Like, somebody would sit in that throne for a couple of centuries, and then they would be relieved, and somebody else would. And this has been an ongoing thing on this planet, a constant rotation of the planetary princes. The reason for that is basically the same reason why Trump used to appoint acting positions, like acting Secretary of Defense, those type of things. It's for the same reason. It's to keep a holding pattern. Because if you're only in the position temporarily, then you're really not in a position to make sweeping changes. All you can really do, if you're just acting in that position, is just keep the status quo. That's what it is meant by acting in a certain position. You're just keeping the status quo. Nothing's going forward, but nothing's going backwards either. And then when it is rumored that Malachi Melchizedek took the planetary prince throne early in the 20th century, right, and then shortly after that, that's when the archangels came back. And they set up headquarters, which I am fairly certain that they set up headquarters in Adams Mountain in Washington. So, Washington State. And just because it was always a different place, but just within the last like 80, 90 years, the supernatural phenomenon that has taken place in and around this mountain has gone off the charts. And when I was there a couple of years ago, I just suddenly, this voice inside my head was like, headquarters of the archangels. And my jaw fucking dropped. And I was like, no fucking way. And yeah. And then as I thought about it, I was like, wow. I was like, that actually makes fucking sense. Because Adams Mountain is an old volcano. Now, while these creatures can phase in and out to pass through solid matter, it's not a comfortable position to stay in all the time. It would be like it would just be like running all the time in place, because they've got to move through the solid rock into the mountain. And that mountain is ideal because it's honeycombed with tunnels and chambers, because it's an older volcano. So these beings could phase shift through the solid rock into an open cavern, and they can be relaxed in there because no human is getting in there. There's no way for a human to get in there. And just for a human to even want to climb up there is quite the feat. People have died on this mountain. And so it would make the perfect headquarters for the archangels to be at, if they were going to be anywheres on the planet. And it would have to be America, because America is the last hope for the world. People can bitch and complain about white supremacy all they want in America or even in Canada, but these are the only two countries in the world, maybe with the exception of Great Britain, but seriously, that allows everybody a chance to do something productive with their lives. Other countries, basically, your choices are severely limited mostly by family tradition. I mean, by moving our ancestors, by moving to North America, they took this as a new beginning, and they left everything behind in the old world, and they had to come up with new beliefs because they're in a new environment. It's winters were easy in Europe, are easy in Europe. They're really, really shitty in North America. So priorities shifted drastically, especially amongst families. And so because the priorities shifted, it shifted the culture as well. And then in order to survive in this new land, close ties with the native population was absolutely necessary. That's why we don't have a real European accent. I mean, you listen carefully to the First Nations when they speak in their original tongue, and the ones that are raised with their original tongue and then they learn English later, they have our accent. Or I should say, we have theirs, but they always have our accent. It's not like when an East Indian comes to this country and learns English. We all know what they sound like. Sounds like Haboob on Simpsons. Anybody that comes to this country that grew up in a different language has the accent of that language. Why don't the First Nations carry the accent from their language when they learn English? Unless the accent that we're already speaking is a First Nations accent. I was listening to a guy from Alabama talking on a podcast, and this was just like a regular guy off the street. He was a what do you call him? A guy that shows up and tends to your lawns and weeds in your garden and stuff like that. Groundskeeper. So he's just a groundskeeper, owns his own business, pretty down to earth guy, and he had he had a real Alabama accent. And I was listening to him talk, and he was in a room full of people that were like professionals in their field. And so these were educated men that he was in a room with. And I'm listening to him talk to these guys and the way that he's talking. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, it's like, where the hell did you learn all these, how did all these phrases that he was using come about? I mean, it kind of reminded me of Newfie, how Newfies talk. It's like everything was everything was like a metaphor. And the words that he was putting together, and I'm just like, wow. I mean, it was simple English, but at the same time, it was pretty sophisticated because what he was saying was describing exactly what these scientists and engineers were doing, except he said it in a way that was like more related to everyday life and not life in a laboratory. Let's put it that way. I guess that would be the best way to describe it. Well, they were like using scientific terms. He translated it to like everyday language, and it was impressive to watch how he was like drawing these lines of connection between what the scientists were saying to him and what he could, how he could relate it to real life. So, yeah, I sometimes wonder. It's like, where does this language come from originally? Because there's no reason for it if you came directly from Europe, settled in North America, and then had children, and those children learned from other Europeans. Then they should still have European phrases. And still, I mean, even coming from Eastern Canada, there's not too many European phrases. Like I listen to how people speak in Great Britain, and it's like we don't use any of that, and it just makes you wonder how the fuck did that happen? I mean, a boot in a car, well, we call it a trunk, they call it a boot. It's like, well, where did that come from? It's like, why is such a difference in the way we describe things in our language? Anything?
I don't know. What's next?
What's next? That's a good question. I was I was reading a little bit in the Urantia book, and the Urantia book was talking about um, the difference between liberty and false liberty. I guess we're going to have to know that difference going forward into the future. And I guess it's probably not as simple as all of that. It goes back to to a Luciferian philosophy. Luciferian philosophy gives us a false liberty by saying that might is right. But the Urantia book tells us that there's only one path for true liberty. And what it says, to read it directly, true liberty is the associate of genuine self-respect. That's what true liberty is genuine self-respect. False liberty is a consort of false admiration. So false liberty is your ego. True liberty is the fruit of self-control. False liberty is the assumption of self-assertion. And then it just goes on. Self-control leads to altruistic service. Self-admiration tends towards the exploitation of others in selfish aggrandizement. And for the selfish attainment for the sake of possession of unjust power.
And which paper is that in? So I'll just put it in the notes.
Paper 54, 1.5.
Okay, yeah.
13.7.
Okay, one moment. 54. Okay, and give me the rest of it. I'm not familiar with the nomenclature of all the chapter and verse kind of thing.
Yeah.
Paper 54, and then what?
Colon 1.6.
Mm-hmm.
That should get them there.
Okay, so yeah, paper 54 colon 1.6.
Yeah. That's how the
Okay.
Arancha book is divided up. It gets a little bit more specific if you really wanted to like really nail it in. It has a shorter number for like the paragraph itself. So you can really like narrow in, but it's not like books and verses like it is in like the Western Bible. It's
Yeah.
I guess it's a more logical layout as from what I can see, because it's not like dividing everything up. It's just numbering the paragraphs so that you can reference a paragraph easily. Very much like the way law books are set up. Very, like I said, very logical.
Okay.
So the
Yeah. And I just remembered that I had sent a couple of questions in the Telegram, I guess. So I've got that up. I think, I don't know if you have more stuff or not, but I had a couple of things. If you didn't, I
no,
guess.
go ahead.
Okay. Let's see. So we have discernment to grow and thrive. Let's talk about discernment. We've been talking about it a lot, and it just occurred to me to wonder, what is an optimal environment for discernment to grow and thrive? I know that the gift of discernment had been bestowed on this planet, and it's working its way around to people who accept it. But I don't know exactly what I'm asking. I guess what's the best way, I guess, for me to optimize my discernment, and then also communities. What's like an optimal community? How would I identify a community in which I would expect to find more discernment versus less discernment? I guess, if does that even sound like a legitimate question to you?
No,
But
that's
what I'm asking.
no, that's a good one. I would say that the environment for discernment to grow is universal with all environments that you want rich fruits to grow out of. And the reason why I'm laughing is because the best and richest fruits always grow from shit. So I would say that discernment would grow best in a world steeped in bullshit. And it just so happens that we have one on hand. Like when you look at it like that, you see the brilliance of what Michael has done. It's just, it's so hard to describe. Well, I mean, I guess the closest I came to describe it is that we are literally being trained to be Michael's army against evil. This is what we will be out in the universe. We are Michael's army against evil. After going through this shit, do you think that there'd be a chance in hell of any Urantian that makes it to the Mansion worlds that they're ever going to betray Michael? Ever? I mean, we all show up at the Mansion worlds, hoping that everything that we learned here is true about Michael and his universe and how everything. I mean, we die with that hope, and then we wake up with that hope, and when we discover that it's all true, it's like, do you think any Urantia that has made it to that level is ever going to betray Michael? Not in any eternity, ever. Basically, Michael has fast-tracked us to be Trinity sons without being trinitized. That's what he's done. Basically, he fast-tracked us through university, and we didn't get our high school diploma. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So yeah, this universe is going to shine. It's going to be a couple of billion years, maybe even a trillion. Doesn't really matter. Michael knows this. It doesn't matter. It's as as long as there is forward momentum in the universe, nothing matters. It doesn't matter. All the evil can come out of the cracks of the universe and attack all they want. It does not matter because Michael and all the beings that what's the word I'm looking for? That honor him and respect him will stand with him. And eventually, evil will always consume itself. Evil is always born pregnant with the seeds of its own destruction. And Michael knows this. And time is nothing. It's only means something to us because we have a finite amount of it on this rock. So we feel like we got to get things done. We're in a hurry. But that's just the nature of living this existence, is that that's part of it. And that's the way it should be. You should always feel like something is nipping at your ass. You should always feel that way because it'll motivate you to move forward. The second you stop and think that you're safe, it's like the race with the tortoise and the hare. It's like the tortoise or the hare figured he's like the fastest creature, so he could afford to rest. The tortoise, understanding that he's not the fastest, knew that as long as I keep going forward, I will get there. And that's all he did, is just kept on going forward. As spiritual creatures, that is what we're supposed to do. We're move forward. That is all that is our number one thing. Because Michael is always moving forward, and why should we want to do anything less? I mean, I love the future. I mean, I look forward to it. I mean, it's just because it's always new. It's, wake up every morning like it's Christmas because there's always something new to do that day. I don't know. Figure it out, I guess, but you should always, I mean, I wake up in the morning and I'm always, well, I always think to myself, we woke up. We didn't die in our sleep. So that's always a good start to the day. Because, I mean, you could die in your sleep. Heart attack in your sleep? How the fuck are you going to know that? I mean, you went to bed and you didn't wake up. Somebody's going to discover you, but yeah, you're not going to know. How could you? So whenever I'm always grateful when I wake up in the morning because shit happens.
Yep. Yeah. It's a good, every day is a gift. That's why it's called the present.
Oh, I always thought that was so cute.
Okay, so it is. It is. So let's see. I got my second question, and then well, we'll see how long this one goes. But I had I guess something after that, something I wanted to mention to do with, I don't know, a TV show we started watching from a few years ago. But anyway, I'll throw this out here. It popped up in my news feed that Canada's finance minister, or whoever it was, proposed $30 billion in COVID spending over 6 years. So I'm just curious, what are they planning to spend that money on in relation to COVID and 6?
Christ don't. The thing is that I can't figure out where the money's going. It's like, seriously, it's like, if it's not being returned back into the economy, then how does the dollar inflate? So it's like they're printing all this money, but it's not being circulated back out into the economy. So printing it devalues our currency. Stuffing it away just makes the rest of us poor. So, I mean, part of me believes that they're not even printing the money. They're just generating serial numbers is all they're doing. Because to print that amount of money is just, yeah, you'd need a lot of printing presses. That's just all there is to it. Because I mean, you're limited by physical factors. Physics is limiting you on how much money you can print. I mean, the only thing that you can do to print more money is actually build more printing presses. But building a printing press that can print currency, that doesn't go unnoticed by other governments. And they're going to spend, like, in order for a country to have a printing press to print its own money, other governments have to agree that they can have that printing press. But having that printing press is also a huge expenditure, especially if you're like a small country. Do you want to spend all that money to print your own money, or do you want to just source that shit out? For example, Canada prints money for, like, I'm pretty sure it's like 50 countries besides just Canadian currency. They print money for Cuba. They print money for Jamaica. I think they print money for, they print money for a couple of South American countries. Like I think there's 50 altogether. I think there's a list in Wikipedia. And I was just like, I was blown the fuck away that not only are we printing our own currency, we're printing other countries' currencies. It's like, how does that happen?
Yeah, I had not heard that.
No, not too many people. Yeah, nobody knows that. I don't even know how I even stumbled across that information. I must have been doing some like bank research or something stupid. Maybe I was like looking up different currency. I have no idea, but I stumbled across that information and I was just like, that's fucked. So yeah, there's like all this stuff that has to take place in order to print currency. I mean, the paper is special. Well, in Canada, it's plastic, but it's a special type of plastic. And there's like digital codes that have to go into it. There's serial numbers that have to be generated. Mind you, all of this can be done on a supercomputer now, but still, it's like, I don't think they're printing the actual physical money. I think that they're just printing all these serial numbers to devaluate the currency and leave us with nothing. But again, that plan backfires. And it's currently backfiring their face. Why do you think they had that emergency meeting on the environment? That meeting had that little get together a few months ago in Europe had nothing to do with the environment. It had everything to do with banks and what they're going to do, because they've already lost control of the banks and they don't know what to do. Because if they come in with a heavy hand, people people will get skittish and they will abandon the whole system. Because right now, I mean, there's a lot of big companies that are moving into cryptocurrency as a source of value for their companies. And Elon Musk is showing them how it's done. And so other companies are learning from him and they're doing it because it's a safer bet to protect their company if their assets are in crypto as opposed to being with some international monetary fund, which has proven to be unreliable in the last decade. And so, again, in true human fashion, everybody's looking out for themselves. And for some odd reason, these dumb fucks didn't take that into account. I if you put together a plan that involves other people, there's really only one aspect of your plan that you can absolutely guarantee, like 99.9% guarantee is it will can be executed flawlessly. And that is if you have people operating in their best in their own self-interest. That's the only way you're gonna knock out a plan that's gonna 100% succeed. There's got to be something in it for the other person. If there's nothing in it for them, all ambition for your plan just circled the drain faster than you think. Yeah, people might play along and to see where they could benefit, but they're going to have one foot in and one foot out the whole time you're going through your plan. That's just the way it is. And I don't know, anytime I put together a plan, I always accounted for that. I always accounted for someone that's going to fuck off because it doesn't serve their self-interest any longer. So you got to switch to plan B real fast, because you always got to be thinking, okay, if this person walks on me, can I still execute my plan? Oh, I can. Well, then, I have to, make the deal a little bit sweeter for that person because I need them. Whereas this other person might not need them as much. Well, the deal ain't so sweet for them. Everybody is paid according to the value that they bring to the project. That's how I always done things. It's like, if your value is minimal, then your reward is minimal. If your value to the project is greater, then you're going to get a greater slice of the pie. That's just how it works. True capitalism in action. That's what true capitalism is. And that's why I love capitalism, because socialism, communism, all that does is just, if everybody knows that they're going to be rewarded the same, there is no incentive to do better. This is why Michael abhors socialism. Michael abhors communism. I know this because of things that he said to that young Indian boy when they were handing out alms around the city. Jesus never felt that it was the government's place to do altruism work. He never felt that welfare was a government responsibility. Jesus always felt that welfare was a community responsibility. It's like, so if you've got poor people in your community, it's because your community is failing them, is how Jesus looked at it. And the community should come together and figure out why this person is failing and how they can help this person to live at least the bare minimum of existence. That's the kind of community that Jesus envisioned, is people helping each other. And this could be communities any size, up to 1 million people. After 1 million people, things start to get lost. But up to 1 million people, there's still community. It'll be pockets, but it's enough people. It's enough people to sustain a city. But you start getting over 1 million, then people will start falling through the cracks. And so it's a good number. Yeah, I think it's a good number. I mean, shit, when Canada had a smaller population, it did seem like we all knew each other. I mean, you could travel from from the east to the west, and if you bumped into somebody else that was from the east, there was a good chance that you knew somebody. Like 7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. There was always somebody. It's like, oh yeah, I know that guy. Yeah, I used to buy fish from him. Oh yeah, me too. It just. But now, you get lost. The best, I meet somebody from New Brunswick. If they came from the same area as me, then, I was like, that pizza shop on such and such a corner? Well, chance of them knowing that pizza shop is slim to none. I mean, unless they lived on like pretty much the exact same street that I lived on in the exact same town, they might not know that pizza joint because in their part of town, they've got their own pizza joint up on the corner. So there's no reason for them to know anything about the pizza joint up on my corner, even though I lived up the road from like one of the best pizza joints. But that's just my opinion. I go back to New Brunswick. It's like one of the first things that I do is I order a pizza from Pizza Shack and garlic fingers and donair sauce. And oh yeah, it's so good. Yeah, there's nothing like that out here. And the donair sauce out here is watery.
We're 8. Okay.
Ah. So.
Yeah. Did you have? Oh, I don't know. I just wondered if you had anything else. I don't know. That's maybe. I don't know. I wanted. Thought maybe. Yeah. Did you have anything else?
Other than.
This might be kind of fun.
Oh, what do you got?
Well, let's see. It was a couple of weeks ago. We found out about that History Channel series. It's like in its 9th season now, I think. But The Curse of Oak Island. We started at season 1. 5 episodes in season 1, and we were hooked. And we're about halfway through season 2 now. And yeah.
I read about that shit when I was like 8 years old. That legend of the Curse of Oak Island, that is legendary in the Maritimes. It's the kind of story that you learn in elementary or middle school. And I remember reading about that, and then I did watch Curse of Oak Island, and my conclusion is that whatever got hid on there, they wanted it to stay hid. And the amount of effort that went into it is just mind-boggling. And how they did it, well, there's really only one way they could have done it, and it's ingenious. So basically, this island is off the coast of Nova Scotia, and on the opposite shore from Fundy of the Fundy Bay, and um, this island was two islands at one time. And what these people did a long time ago to hide whatever they wanted to hide is they came in and they brought in ships between these two islands, and then they proceeded to build a dam. They dammed it up. I don't think they had to dam it up very much on one side, but they had to a lot on the other. And they built a drain system for the water and everything. And they emptied out that whole place. Basically, they made a dry dock, and they had some ships in there, I think like up to 3, and they just let the ships hit the ground. Now, once they had drained the water between these two islands, what they had access to now was a sheer cliff wall. And all they had to do was dig into the side of the cliff and make all their tunnels under the island. And they could do all of this in dry. And then they turned around and they made a shaft that they could get in and that could be accessed in the future, but not easily, because they wanted people to be able to find this place. But the people that were looking had to be at a certain level of technology. I personally feel like Oak Island has Michael's fingerprints all over it, or Malachi's fingerprints, but definitely Michael influenced, because it's just the way the whole mechanism is set up that you have to be at a certain level of technology in order to get to this treasure. And I mean, with all the destruction that has gone on in that island, they might have destroyed the chamber that the treasure was in. Who knows? And but maybe, who knows? Maybe there's another chamber that's undiscovered. But yeah, they put in all these traps and everything. They did it all dry, and then when everything was ready, they took and they bursted open the dam, let all the water flood back in, and bury the ships under all this water. And then eventually the whole area turned into a swamp because they didn't break the whole dam down. They only broke out a section. So that meant that water was not moving in and out of the sea. And so it created a swamp that we have to this day. And when they flooded it, it filled all the back chambers with water and set up all the traps that are there now. And all the traps were all set up. They were basically, they used pockets of air to hold this water at a certain level so it didn't pop up through the well. And so they utilized a lot of air pockets to do this, and they knew what they were doing. They're smart fuckers. And so that as soon as the first seal was broken and that air was allowed to escape all at once, that triggered all the traps and the whole thing flooded. And then and then by that happening, with all those traps triggering, that suddenly fired every treasure hunter's imagination. What could be so fucking important that somebody went through all this trouble to build all these booby traps? And yeah, if that doesn't inspire you, nothing will. Michael knows us better than we know ourselves. He knew that if we did something like that, we would spend decades digging through that shit to find it.
There's two. I'm going to interject just a couple of things here that I've seen so far. One is the approach that the current team is using. They know, they extensively researched everything that happened before. They know what they did right, what they did wrong, and they saw what various levels of respect was given to the island. So they decided a couple of things. They're going to follow any leads that are valuable, or whatever. I don't know the word, but and then they're going to they approached it with a sense of respect for the island, that they knew they had seen so many people walk away with nothing, like yeah, and they thought, okay, well, there may be something here. We have some money to spend on this. We can do it. We're going to do it in a scientific way, and we're going to do it in a respectful way. And then my second point, I think in the middle of season 2, they go to the Halifax Masonic Lodge, and they talk to a librarian, I think, or one of the guys in the lodge, and they explain that they think this could have something to do with the Templars or the Masons or something like that, and they said this is an engineering marvel. And basically the Mason says, yeah, whatever you find there, are we ready for it? And anyway, so a couple of interesting things that from the series that I've seen so far, and what the future holds for that, I don't know. There's 7 more seasons for us to watch, but yeah. So that is it's an engineering marvel.
Yeah.
That's, if nothing, even if they come up with nothing, the part of the treasure will be that they got to get hands-on with this thing.
You're only in season 2. They are only scraping the tip of the iceberg for the amount of infrastructure that was put in under that island. Like, it blew me away.
In season, how far have you gone? You all the way, season 8?
I think I watched up to season 7 for sure.
So, okay. Yeah.
But there are things that they find when they start like building coffer dams to push the water further out into the ocean so that they can get at certain things. There's like a treasure trove of information that they find out. Like, they don't even, like, whatever went on that island, that is why I can say with confidence, whatever went on that island was at an industrial level, because they discover like docks for ships and loading for unloading and loading ships. These are like ramps coming up out of the ocean. Like, there's just so much that they discover, and it leaves you wondering. It's like, this was a major operation. And the thing is where they discover this demarcation point for the ships is on the opposite side of the island, where you can't see from the mainland. So that means this whole operation could have been taking place on this island, and nobody on the mainland would have known fuck all about it. And so they would work away on that island in total peace. Nobody would ever know their comings and goings. And this was not like where this island is. Where this island is, there is no major seaport close by. I think it's like another 100 kilometers upshore, over the horizon for sure. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, so basically unobserved by any major group locality. Yeah, so I was thinking, even in season 1, that basically the things they were talking about, I'm thinking pyramids. I mean, not like it's an engineering, the level of engineering and the I don't know about misdirection, but the intricacy. I'm watch videos about like the Great Pyramid and stuff like that, and I'm like, whoever did this was on that level of engineering.
Yes, it's a level of engineering that is just mind-boggling for the era that they were in. But little thing about the pyramids, something that a lot of people don't know, there is actually a short distance from the Great Pyramid underground, going down into an underground chamber. There is an exact replica of the interior of the Great Pyramid, just a short distance away from it. Nobody knows what the hell that's all about. So, and I personally, I believe,
I've seen the video about
it. I personally believe that the pyramids were a great machine. And I am not discounting the possibility that it was a great weapon of Luciferian design is what I'm thinking. And I'm thinking that it was probably built sometime 30,000 years ago, about maybe 36,000 years ago is when it was built. If it's not part of the structures that existed before the first catastrophe, it's part of the structures that were built after the great catastrophe. There was the fallen had a resurgence, but it didn't last very long because there was only a few of them left, because some of them went up into orbit when the catastrophe hit, and they came back down because they had nowhere else to go. Mars was becoming desolate. Venus is they couldn't go to Venus, and so they had to come back to Earth. And so they came back down sometime after the default of Adam and Eve, and they started to rebuild with a new generation of humans that knew nothing of the old stories. And so they tried to revive the old ways through stories. This is where all of our stories from like Zeus and what have you come from. And they tried to like brainwash humanity into doing their bidding. It worked for probably about maybe 5,000 years, give or take. And then it just slowly, the whole thing just started to unravel on them, because without the tree of life, they were dying. They died. And then, of course, following generations after them, their children, they did not have the same inheritance that their parents had. So they were more mortal. They lived for hundreds of years. Some of them lived a couple of thousand years, but they all eventually died. I mean, while their parents could live tens of thousands of years, their children could only live maybe 1,000 or so. And then slowly, as time went forward, even that began to their lifespans got shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter, until finally they were all gone, until we get to the time of of uh, David, where we're only dealing with the remnants of their legacy in the form of giants. The technology's all gone. Nobody understands it anymore, but these are still big men that can cause damage. And so they chose their side, and, and people chose their sides, and there were battles. And they, our recovery back into a technological existence hasn't been going on for very long, a few hundred years. That's it. I mean, we're not discovering anything new. We're rediscovering everything. And I mean, you can see some of the stuff, like you can see a lot of stuff on like walls of so-called temples in India. Shit, there's a carving of a guy on a bicycle. Looks like he's wearing a helmet. It's carved on a wall in India. He's like, what the fuck? What's that doing there? And so makes you wonder. Oh, and at the time before the cataclysm, the sky was literally filled with flying cities or floating cities. And there's models of these cities in India. And what you see like this castle, this floating castle carved on the wall, in a sculpture, really, in this temple. But what I found curious, and it was what I always suspected would have to happen in order to make these cities fly, is that every sculpture of the city, on the underside of the city, was a sacred geometry symbol. And I'm just like, that is it right there. They used these vibration patterns to keep their cities afloat. But then after the cataclysm, energy lines on the planet that we still know exist, they all got broken up and they're separated now. And so those energy lines are not as strong as they used to be. And so that technology doesn't work anymore. That technology was very environmentally specific. It needed a certain environment in order to operate, and that environment does not exist anymore. There's already, like, I read, it was a while ago, back in the 90s, these scientists researching old fossils, like plant fossils, they came to the conclusion that during the time of the dinosaurs, the atmosphere of the planet was very thick and rich with oxygen, which would allow these great animals to exist with such tiny lung capacities. And so because the atmosphere was thicker, it allowed for larger birds to fly because they could push on the wind and pull themselves up. When the planet went through its first catastrophe, it grew. And if you ever see the planet without the oceans, they take like a sonar picture of the planet from space, and so they can see how the topographics are underneath the ocean. And what you see underneath the ocean is like the earth was pulled apart and twisted. And you got to sit there and wonder how that happened. And just by looking at it, I don't care what the geologists say, by looking at that scarring that is going on underneath the planet, it looks like it happened in a very, very short period of time. Like the first time I saw it, I was like, no fucking way. That took millions of years. Because it looked like the planet was ripped apart, like literally ripped apart. And I thought to myself, if this took place over millions of years, it should be smooth. It's like when you're pulling toffee apart. If you do it slowly, it will have a smooth break. You try to do it quickly, you just end up just cracking and ripping it. But like I said, you do it slowly. And that's how I looked at it. It's like, no. And then you end up reading ancient stories. There's one story of Toph standing on the shore, and he talks about watching uh, the horizon sink away in a period of 300 years. And I was like, yes, when you look at what's going on under the ocean, you can easily see that, yeah, I could see that taking like a 300-year period to do that ripping. That that actually makes more sense to me. It's for some odd reason, even though it's such a fantastical story, it's like, what the hell is going on here? It still makes sense when you look at what's going on under the ocean. And nothing that the geologists say makes sense, because it made sense for them back in the 18th century because they had limited data. But now, with all the new data that we got, the theories of geology from over 100 years ago don't apply. They make no sense. The stuff that we have learned in the 21st century it paints a very different story from what our forefathers were guessing with just observation in the 18th century, with no instruments to measure anything or anything like that. But we have all those instruments now, and we can measure this stuff. We can see underground what has happened. And a lot of like mainstream scientists are stuck in their 19th century model. And it's like, we've got a lot of data now, and unless you're willing to look at that data, you're always going to be stuck in your 19th century model. This is why I don't pay attention too much to scientists that have not upgraded themselves and done the proper reading, because if they did the proper reading, these old fossil scientists would understand that, whoa, I was wrong. But they can't do that because they wrote books on this subject, and they're making money off of this subject. So if they change their narrative now, they're afraid that they'll stop getting paid. So the pitfalls of our system that's one of the big pitfalls of our system, is that people are always afraid of losing their livelihood, so they become stagnant in their lives, and nothing gets done, and things progress very slowly. But in a way, that's what Michael wanted. He wanted things to progress slowly. He needed us to slow down. It might seem cruel, but we needed 2 world wars in order to slow us down and also to bring us together as a global community. How else could you do it? How else would you get people from all over the world and join together in a single goal? There's actually 2 ways you could do it, but the other way may or may not work. But having 2 world wars where everybody in the world is involved, I mean, think about all the mates that Canadian soldiers brought back from Europe. Think about all the Canadian soldiers that stayed in Europe. Think about all the Indian soldiers that went to Europe. How many of them brought back a mate? How many of them stayed in Europe? Same thing with Africans. All over the world, they all came to Europe to fight. Europe and the Middle East to fight. And so that spread people all over the place. So if you're looking to intermix the races in a very short period of time, get them all together to fight in a war against a single enemy. And that will do it. And then the bonus that you get on top of all of that is you get technology. The first war didn't do it because there were a lot of generals stuck in their 19th century thinking. And plus, at the time, people said it was going to be another million years before we could fly. And they were wrong about that. And so by the time we got to the Second World War, there was already a generation that was young that went through the First World War. And so they had experience, and they were not going to make the mistakes the generals in the First World War did, because that was devastating. There's like hardly anything positive came out of the First World War. It was just a mass slaughter is all it was. I mean, these old generals, they couldn't get it out of their head about traditional war, where two sides line up on either side and they fire at each other. These generals were stuck in a 19th century model of war. And meanwhile, you've got guns, machine guns, cannon, like tanks, and shrapnel grenades and all this other crazy shit, and you want to fight a 19th century war with that stuff? It's amazing that Germany even lost. It really is. I mean, Germany shouldn't have lost technically, but there were things that happened that that almost seems like bullshit luck. And it's just like, wow, if that didn't happen, the Allies would have lost the war for sure. Oh, if Hitler or if the Chancellor didn't make this decision, then they would have won. Like, there was just like so many mistakes. And then you come into World War II, and believe it or not, Hitler repeated every single mistake that the Chancellor in World War I made. It's just like, are you stupid, buddy? It's like, okay, the Nazis were winning on the Russian front. Now, the Russian front was important because that would have gave the Germans a way into the Middle East and to Asia Minor. Boom, nice direct route right through Russia. Perfect. Didn't have to deal with all these European countries. All Hitler had to do was stay focused on the Russian front. That's all he had to do. And he would have won World War II. Would have won it hands down. But instead, he decided to turn his focus to the British front. Right in the middle of all that fighting on the Russian front, Hitler suddenly decides to attack Great Britain. And Great Britain was not attacking Germany at that time. Great Britain was happy. They were ecstatic to stay out of any war. I mean, Germany was invading France. The English were like, yeah, whatever. Fuck the French. And they were quite happy to stay on their island and let all of Europe burn. And all Hitler had to do was just leave Great Britain alone. Seriously, that's all he had to do. He had Europe in the palm of his hand. And then out of a clear blue sky, he decided to start bombing Great Britain. And as soon as that first bomb fell, Germany lit up a hornet's nest that they had no idea how to contain, because the English came back with a ferocious, army that was just like, oh yeah, like the Germans didn't stand a chance after that. I mean, as soon as Hitler attacked Great Britain, he had already lost the war. And I think to myself, how could you not know that, buddy? How could you not understand that by splitting your troops between two fronts, that you were going to lose one of those fronts? I guess he figured that, the Russians were beat down and weak and he was going to make it in. But the Russians have an old tactic, and it's been successful for like centuries. And that is, wait till winter. They've lived in those winters. They know how to deal with it. And so that's what they've always done with every enemy that has ever attacked Russia. Russia plays with them until winter. And then once winter hits, the Russians are like, yeah, whatever. I mean, they had the clothing for it. They grew up in it. And yeah, anybody attacking them was always coming from the south. So it's one of the main reasons why the Americans have never attacked Canada too, is because of our winters. They like the only ones that can even come close to understanding a Canadian winter are the provinces that are just directly below the prairie provinces in Canada. Was it Wyoming, Montana? They are really the only states.
North Dakota, Minnesota.
North Dakota. So these are really the only states that understand what a Saskatchewan winter is, what a Manitoba winter is, what an Alberta winter is. Out of those three provinces, I am told Manitoba is the worst for winter. The wind starts blowing and it doesn't fucking stop until spring. It's just it's just doom and gloom for like almost 6 months. Saskatchewan, we do get a good pickup of wind, but we get is just cold, just dead cold all the time. I mean, once we hit January, we'll be hovering around minus 30 pretty much on a consistent basis. I mean, right now we're in the low high 20s. And that's the way it's going to stay till probably 1st of April. And then it starts warming up. But after sitting in like minus 30 all winter, it warms up to minus 25. It's a fucking spring day. You want to take your jacket off and go sit outside and be like, yeah, this is beautiful. But you find out it's still fucking cold. But at least there's more sun. But I do love this part of the country. It's a lot nicer than it is in the Maritime. The Maritimes, it's wet and cold. Here in Saskatchewan, it's cold, but it's dry, which is nice. Like the snow just like blows away like just powder. That's all it is. It's just powder. I just turn on my wipers. Whoosh, I drive up the road. All the snow's blowing off the vehicle. By the time I get to the main street out here in the corner, most of the snow's already blowing off my vehicle.
I tell people it doesn't snow a whole lot in Saskatchewan. It just blows from one end of the province to the other.
What I noticed when I first got out here is that it doesn't so much snow as the air just freezes. Like it's so fucking cold, the air just freezes in midair, and then the flakes just fall to the ground. Like the accumulation of snow, a lot of it is just from when it hits like minus 35. Once it goes below minus 35, the atmosphere pretty much freezes. I've been out in the Badlands at minus like 38, and the air is just sparkling like silver. And you're just like, that's frozen oxygen is what that is. And yes, it does hurt. It like you can't breathe fast. Like deep breath, forget it. You got to keep shallow breaths, because if you take in a big swallow of air at minus 35, my God, it hurts. It hurts a lot. And it's not something that you do. Like usually if you got to breathe hard, you're usually sticking your head in the collar of your jacket to get some warm air off of your body. But yeah, it hurts to breathe when it gets that cold. You gotta just take it easy. And when we used to work down the patch, it was me and my buddy, we had this down to a science. We figured it out, because if we fucked up, it just meant longer times. We figured out that we could work 6 to 8 minutes at minus 35 outside, jump in the truck for 6 to 8 minutes, warm up, jump back out, work for another 6 to 8, and we could do that back and forth, and we didn't get first stage frostbite in our hands. Because once you get first stage frostbite in your hands, it's like somebody had just put needles under your fingernails and is twisting it slowly. It hurts so bad. Like, grown men cry thawing their fingers out after first degree frostbite. Like, it hurts that bad. I mean, like, a kick in the nuts would be less painful. Was it there? Oh shit! I was.
Yeah, I've had. I don't know. Yeah, so I had that happen, and it was kind of for a stupid reason. I couldn't find the gloves I wanted to go and plug into my bin temperature sensors and run the bin reader. So I did it with bare fingers, and I was out there for about 5 minutes at, I don't know, minus 15 with a wind. And yeah, first they get cold, then they start to hurt, then they go numb. And yeah, no, by the time I finished that, I knew I had to get back inside and put them in. And still, you know, I've got a little bit of. This was 2 years ago, and they're better now, but still more sensitive to cold than they were before. So yeah, folks, invest in proper gloves, please.
I think that I've
for whatever job you're doing, spend a little money on some dexterous gloves for moderately cold temperatures.
I think that I've destroyed the nerves in my fingertips because my fingers have been frozen so many times over the years. And yeah, it still hurts. It still hurts a lot. The other day we came out, what was it here? I think it was minus 28. So it was just below that, just below minus 25. So once it gets below minus 25, it just starts to get even more stupid for like the cold, the way that it penetrates your body more. And yeah, we got down to minus 29 this week. And so we don't expect it to get much better. Of course not. I always say to people, it's like global warming is a problem for people in warm climates. It's not a problem for us here in the north. We welcome it. So, you know, screw the carbon tax. Let's just let's make Canada warm. Let's turn it into a tropic destination. So that's like an hour 40.
Okay, yeah. So we can, and yeah, I think we should probably shut it down.
Okay, well, this has been Crow.
Interesting discussions. This has been Peter, and this has been P&K Q&A. Peace out.
Peace out.